Village Board meeting of Monday, November 23, 2015 to order. Are you taking the roll? Eric, if you could read the roll, please.
Jerry Adrian.
Here.
Stephanie Brossington.
Here.
Brett Svoboda.
Here.
Dan Kolk.
Here.
Mary Pat Lytle.
Here.
Tom Mooney.
Here.
Claire Utter.
Here.
All present.
Before we begin this evening, it is with a heavy heart that I can confirm that a McFarland Police Department lost one of its own today when Officer Ryan Copeland passed away as a result of a car crash. I ask for your thoughts and prayers for the officer's family and for other officers in the department as they deal with their loss. The village board shares in the mourning this great tragedy along with the entire village. Steps have been taken to have the governor issue a proclamation ordering flags statewide to be flown at half-staff in memory of Ryan. At this time, let us rise for a moment of silence in remembrance of Officer Copeland. Thank you. Moving on, we have public appearances. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the village board at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. Public announcements and communications. November 26 and 27, the village offices will be closed. That's Thanksgiving and the following Friday. On December 1st is the first day to circulate nomination papers. Also on December 1st, winter parking regulations go into effect. Public communications. December 5th will be Christmas in the Village, and I encourage everyone who has not participated or have in the past to take part in this event. There will be a parade, a bonfire, and I understand Santa Claus might even show up that day. Moving on to consent agenda. I will move to approve prepaid checks 64963 through 64947 in the amount of $17,888.28, and current check 64948 through 65028 in the amount of $185,473.60. I will move to approve the recommendation from Police Chief Shervin that the parade permit application submitted by Paul Vinn of the McFarland Fire and Rescue Christmas Parade on December 5th, 2015 be approved and the permit be issued.
Second.
Second by Mary Pat. Discussion? Kelsey, I don't know if you'll address this, but I noticed in our packet the checks numbered 64927 through 64935 are not included on the agenda. I know these were prepaid checks. Is this just something we'll approve at our next board meeting? They're on page 9 of the packet. It's 64927 through 64935. I believe those are all prepaid checks. So can we have those, make a note to have those on the agenda for our next meeting? Further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the business portion of the meeting. We have a request from Elaine Ursel, LLP, to amend the developer agreement for the opening of Phase 6 of Parkview Estates subdivision. Kevin, did you want to take the podium and let the rest of the board know what you have in mind?
All right, again, I'm Kevin Ersel with the Ersel LLC out in Parkview Estates. What we're looking to do is open up Phase 6 here, which is in the blue here, another 9 lots. Right now, we have this finished, and we're on this year with just 3 lots left. So we're looking to add on, hook this Sugar River back up, and finish off the top of the hill for next summer.
Questions from any of the board members? If not, I will then move to approve the developer agreement amendment submitted by Elaine Ursel, LLP, for the opening of Phase 6 of the Parkview Estate subdivision, with the contingency that you receive village staff approval as you go along.
Second.
Second by Dan. Discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thanks, Kevin. We now have a discussion and possible action on hiring a consultant.
We move C up and take it out of order, get out of here. Or maybe there's no discussion on B, but I was just.
Well, if there's no objections, we can move item C up, although Brock has told me he plans to stay for the entire meeting, so.
Well, I didn't realize it was back.
So if there's no objection, I will move item C up at this point. And that will be a discussion and possible direction on regarding ordinance number 2015-10 and ordinance to amend sections 11-64 parent N and 11-69 relating to outdoor sports activities at establishments licensed to serve alcohol. In your packet is some information in regard to what is being proposed. You will see that both the Public Safety Committee and the Plan Commission reviewed the requests. I think there were 2 elements or 3 elements to the request. The first is dealing with changing the fencing requirement to allow netting. The Public Safety Committee, and correct me, Jerry, if I misstate this, was comfortable with the current language within the ordinance that talks about fencing of metal, wood, or plastic. As I understand it, what the Spartan Bowl is proposing is to have nylon netting to contain the perimeters of the volleyball courts. The Public Safety Committee essentially thought that nylon netting could easily fall within the area of plastic and did not recommend any changes to the ordinance. The Plan Commission had some discussion in that regard, and some of the comments were that it didn't necessarily meet the intent of the ordinance for permanent fencing, and since this was going to be a temporary situation, that it probably would be better to try to recognize that in the ordinance with language to that effect. Again, both the Plan Commission and the Safety Committee were comfortable with this. It's just a matter of what direction the village board would like to go. Keep the ordinance as it is, with the understanding that plastic would include nylon netting, or to recognize that the intent was for permanent fencing and that it should be recognized in the ordinance on a temporary basis and allow for the nylon netting. So that's question number one. Do we want to take these one at a time, or should I go through all of these?
I would suggest one at a time.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
Are there any comments or questions in this regard?
Now, my comment would be this. We're sitting, at the safety committee and the other committee, and we know, we have the background information now. What happens if there's a changeover in board, let's say in 2 to 5 years, and it surfaces again? As far as the interpretation that we're giving it right now, without changing the ordinance, it's left open for interpretation again, is that correct?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be.
And I guess if this is something that Spartanburg would like to see consistent, I think it'd be in everyone's best interest if we sort of shifted the ordinance around to include the netting. So there's no flexibility in misinterpreting what's being said.
Okay.
I guess I agree with that.
And it would be netting on a seasonal basis, so it would be temporary in nature. Okay. Not hearing any objections to that. The next item were the dates that would be allowed for the volleyball. The initial dates at this point were May 1st through September 1st, I believe, in the ordinance. And what was being recommended,
The ordinance says
May 15th through September 15th or 1st?
15.
September 15th, May 15th through September 15th. The request is to change the dates from April 1st to November 1st. And this, I guess, in two respects. One, sometimes the weather in Wisconsin is such that you're able to get out at an earlier time to play volleyball, and the weather may hold well enough into the falls to allow for volleyball past September 15th as well. Both the Public Safety Committee and the Plan Commission both did not see a issue with this and recommended that the village board actually modify the dates that are in the ordinance. This also then defines what seasonal means. So from a seasonal standpoint for the netting, it would be from the April 1st to the November 1st date. Any issues or problems with that?
Yeah, I agree with what took place at the Public Safety Committee, and on page 48 of the packet, they reference what I would prefer we do, is what they recommended or would prefer to have done, and that's just to eliminate the dates altogether. Quoting from their minutes, it says that the dates may not be necessary, that the outdoor sporting ordinance applies to more activities than volleyball, so it should be broader. So I just agree with that. The dates there's no reason to have dates in there. And it applies to volleyball or any other parts of it, as the Public Safety Committee points out. So that would be my preference, that we just eliminate in the ordinance sub C of 69. So it would be whichever the appropriate place is here. I mixed up with which page is which, but we could just eliminate under 169 6C, we could just eliminate that altogether. That would be my preference, but if you want to change it, then change it, but.
I think, Claire, the discussion from the Plan Commission standpoint was if we were going to change the issue with the netting on a temporary basis, we needed something to define what temporary basically meant. What does seasonal mean? And that's why we talked about putting the dates in. So that was a conversation that took place at the Plan Commission.
I saw the Plan Commission discussion too. So I just agree with the Public Safety Committee, that there's no reason for it, and I believe that the other language that's in here already handles this question of temporary. So that's just how I feel.
Okay. Other comments?
I think with the proposed change here, it just clarifies it better, at least for myself. And I think for anyone else coming in, they realize it's seasonal from one date to the next.
I think one of the big issues became one, at least in the safety committee, when we started talking about dates and so forth, was the simple fact that we were saying, do we want an ordinance that covers something wider or beyond volleyball? But I think when it came to planning commission, when that feedback came from the planning commission, it came back more in the realm of saying, no, we want to specifically make this volleyball. And since things were moved that way and in that direction, I don't think anybody in the safety committee would have any disagreement either way on the committee.
Well, the Plan Commission also talked about baseball and having a batting cage temporarily set up and so forth. So most of the conversation took place in regard to volleyball. It was open to other possibilities as well.
But outdoor activities won't generally encompass the period between November 1st and April 1st.
Right.
You know, unless it's, you know, I suppose if it was outdoor curling or something, but it,
Ice hockey, yeah.
ice hockey, right?
You could play outdoor golf, you can play a lot of different activities in the winter. They'll have to, that's why I feel the way I do, that there's language in here that defines this temporary as part of this. And everything subject to review by the Plan Commission anyway, as far as them bringing the design of something like this in. And if there was some crazy person that brings some crazy thing into the Plan Commission, I'm sure they just wouldn't approve it. It's that simple. That's why, but I'm not going to just waste my time.
And then the third item was when the lights should be turned off. Currently, the ordinance talks about the lights and the serving and drinking of alcohol be concluded at 9 o'clock. The request is to have the lights on past 9 o'clock to 9:30, but drinking and serving of alcohol stopped at 9 o'clock. And this is to, in the event that games get started late, there's a delay, that the lighting will still be available to conclude a game, but it won't be beyond 9:30 is what's being proposed. But the other aspect in terms of serving and drinking alcohol would not change. That would still be at 9 o'clock. And I believe the Safety Committee and the Plan Commission both did not have an issue with what was being proposed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I think one of the things, one thing that we really need to clear up though, Brock, is to make sure the extension from 9 to 9:30 is so that you can finish up those games, rather than scheduling to 9:30. Because then we start pushing everything backwards even further, and that's when we'll get into trouble. So if we can kind of make that so that you understand it, design it and schedule it to finish at 9, but if it doesn't, you have the flexibility beyond that, and I think that was the goal.
Sure.
Okay?
Hope that's understood.
Yeah.
And I just need a little clarification. What time are the lights turned off at the tennis courts? Is it 9 or 9:30? Because I think it's 9. Because of the neighbors, they want the noise and all that stuff. So how is this different if the lights remain on until 9:30? Won't there still be noise generated in that area if they're out there? It was just, it wasn't consistent, and we had talked about that at the safety committee also.
I guess that's a possibility.
It-
I don't think, from what Brock has said, and at least what I understood, and I think it relates to what question Jerry asked, This is only to accommodate games that run a bit over the 9 o'clock. It's not to schedule anything that would conclude at 9:30. So that's the intention here.
I understand that, but how's that different from the tennis? You know, if they have games on the tennis court and it runs over at 9 o'clock.
It's a little different, Tom, because this is a scheduled leagues, a league schedule. So there wouldn't be any casual volleyball going on here until 9:30. And I think that's the difference at the tennis courts, because there's a lot of just individual pickup games and rec games at the tennis court. And it's a much tighter neighborhood environment, yeah.
And you also have the Grant Park with softball where the lights are on well past 9 o'clock, so.
Good clarification.
Other comments in regard to this?
Well, if we're agreeing to change it, then we're going to have to change the document that we have before us, because 8 says 9 o'clock, so if this motion is going to be to adopt this new,
What this
well,
is,
aren't we going to make a motion to approve this ordinance?
no.
We're not?
Well.
These changes in the ordinance?
These changes in the ordinance where the language itself will have to be constructed by the attorney. Rather than having the attorney draft the language without knowing whether the board was going to accept any of these changes, really didn't make a whole lot of sense. So if the board says, yes, let's go with this, we will then direct staff to work with the attorney to make those language changes to the ordinance.
And then you'll get it back at the next one.
Yep.
That
Any,
makes sense.
go ahead.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Go that way.
So with that, then I will move to direct staff to work with our attorney to revise, amend sections 11-64 parent N and 11-69 relating to outdoor sports activities at establishments licensed to serve alcohol, to include the temporary fencing that could be nylon netting, however that's going to be worded, that the dates be changed from May 15th to September 15th, changed to April 1st through November 1st, and that the lights be changed from 9 o'clock, being turned off at 9 o'clock to 9:30. Second by Jerry. Further discussion? Hearing none? Did I misstate something?
No, I'm just as a business owner, just trying to think of all the options of what can happen. How much of a difference in understanding what you said, not scheduling a game at 9, not scheduling a game at 9:15, 9:30, how much of a difference leeway-wise, knowing that the alcohol won't be there at 9 o'clock, how much of a difference would there be, say, 9:30 to 9:45 or 10 o'clock, just so we don't come to bring up this option of it again? Knowing that the alcohol is ended, if a game does get pushed back and say it's at 9:45, as far as the village board, do they see a difference between 9:30 and 10 o'clock? Or is 9:30 what's on the table? We're doing it, we're done.
I
I just wanted to bring it up so we're not sitting here again in 18 months or whatever. So I just felt like I should bring it up just in case the conversation is there.
At this point, Brock, I am not going to change my motion. It'll be 9:30, and you'll have to abide by that and make sure everything fits within that time frame.
Yep, perfect. No, that's fine. I just wanted, like I said, the conversation whatever, so it's okay.
If it helps, at least from my perspective, Brock, 9 o'clock is still the ending time.
Sure.
If it runs beyond, we understand that, if there's tie game and that type of thing, so if it runs beyond that, that's why you have that grace half hour in there, okay? Rather than using that, I would assume, I would hope, that there are some nights at 9 o'clock, everybody'd be out. Okay?
Absolutely.
Get them inside and get some more money out of them.
In a perfect world, yes, 9 o'clock. Done.
Okay, all right.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. Now, we're going to move back to item B of the business agenda, discussion and possible action regarding the hiring of a consultant to update the 2006 Village of McFarland Comprehensive Plan. The village received, and then I'm just going to give some general comments and then have Eric and Pauline speak to this. We put out an RFP. We received 4 requests that were returned. Pauline and Eric had an opportunity to meet with 2 of the consultants based on a review of the information that they provided, and came to the conclusion that there is one of the consultants that they are recommending that the village board approve. And I'll turn it over to Eric and Pauline.
Very good. Pauline, you have in the packet, beginning on page 45, the Plan Commission background and recommendations. So I think you wish to add, I think, in terms of the process and how we got there, particularly the 2 different costs.
The higher cost is due to additional information that you required of the consultants. Is that
Correct.
not correct?
Correct. Didn't know if Pauline wanted to talk on that or not. In part, the formatting information that would come to us for the mapping. That's correct. That's what I'm looking for. So how to interface with our mapping, GIS mapping with our engineer, town and country at the project. So the final 2, we asked to kind of review their costs, and MD Roffers came in at the lowest cost for that adjustment. In addition, you offered more of the hours for various meetings, a substantial amount of committee meetings and public input sessions, and as well as a history, having worked with Veer Bicker on the original comprehensive plan, knowledgeable of that. Pauline? What's that? Vanderwall, I'm sorry. I think I put that wrong in my background as well. Come recommended, smaller firm will be getting more of your undivided attention regarding the project. Again, familiar with the village itself and the concepts of working with the individual versus with potentially working with a team approach that some of the other competitors had leads us to make the recommendation for MD Offers. Anything to add on that? Okay. And Mark is here if you have any questions.
Oh, Mark, do you want to take the podium and state your name and who you're with in the event the board members have any questions?
My name is Mark Roffers. I am a co-owner of MD Roffers Consulting, and I'm pleased for the recommendation I've received from staff and happy to answer questions or offer any comments on our proposal.
Questions? Let me kind of direct this at you, Eric, and then you can direct it to Mark. Kate, at our Plan Commission meeting, brought up a number of points that she did not see in the RFP, but needed some clarification or assurances that they were going to be part of the agreement that we actually conclude with Mark?
Yes, I'm trying to remember those.
Regarding the metadata,
Right.
and the fact that that we will be the owners of that data once the project is done.
Yes, you will be.
And confirming that you work in conjunction with Town and Country regarding the GIS mapping, that there will be a partnership there so that the data they receive is something that's usable, correct?
Yes, we're going to be working with them early, so we're confident that we have the data in the format that they need it to allow them to manipulate it long after we're gone and the project is completed. And we'll stay in contact with them throughout the project, and then, of course, deliver all the data in the shapefile and metadata and other GIS format that they need.
Now, you have a number of meetings that, as part of your proposal, but if I understand correctly, and if I don't, correct me, that based on those meetings, I know you have something like 8 meetings with the village board, 7 with the Plan Commission, 8 with some of our community stakeholder members. The number of meetings can be adjusted so that if we don't need as many village board meetings but need more committee meetings or community meetings, that's a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. The general focus, as you have, I know, is to work with your committees. Plan Commission handles planning and zoning issues. Community development handles economic development. So the bulk of the meetings would not be with your full board necessarily, but rather with your committees. But if we find that economic development is generating a lot of tension and interest, and we don't have enough time, but transportation is easy, then we can adjust on the fly and shift meetings. Similarly, if Eric and Pauline and I in the interview were struggling a bit to think about community groups that we could fill that budget in. If we can't fill the budget of community group meetings, certainly more committee meetings or other public involvement is fairly easy for me to do. I think the advantage of working with a small firm is I basically have to consult with my brain to tell you whether something like that would be possible or not. And I'm certainly very interested in delivering public participation that actually matters and means something rather than to be stuck with a formula we developed back in December of 2015.
And if the board would approve your request that you submitted, at what time can you get started? Are we looking at tomorrow, first of the year? What are we looking for?
Well,
and what would you anticipate the time frame being for completion?
I would say we'd get started the day after the contract is executed. We still have to put together a boilerplate. I know we had talked about some adjustments from the proposal proper, so we'd have to work through that. But I can get started immediately following that. And we typically would get started behind the scenes getting data together, before we get everyone all excited about the process. In terms of start to finish, we put together a proposal for a 9-month process from start to finish. My experience suggests that that process typically stretches at the end as meeting schedules get aligned, public hearings needed to be noticed with 30 days advance and things like that. But our full intent is to have you have an adopted plan with you by the end of 2016.
Other questions? If not, then I will move to approve the hiring of M.D. Rofer to update our 2006 Village of McFarland Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
Excuse me. Further discussion?
I was concerned about the number of meetings also, Brad. And is there any way to combine meetings at all? For example, the public forum, or whatever you refer to it as, could it take place when the village board is meeting? Or are there those two separate outcomes that you're looking for?
A public forum could take place at a village board meeting. Sometimes the format of those are a public open house that is a drop-in session, so that it's not necessarily conducive to a board meeting. But I'm all for combining efforts and combining meetings. If we have a topic, community facilities, and you have two committees, for example, that have overlapping responsibilities, to bring them together for efficiency. I'm also all for board members attending, different committee meetings, depending on your practices here. If you're interested in a topic but don't happen to be on that committee or group.
You probably are somewhat familiar with our existing comprehensive plan.
I am. I was
And this
involved.
is a question about where the school district as a stakeholder comes into playing here. They're in the process, they have study groups going on right now to talk about their facilities, with the potential timeline of finishing their study in 2016.
Okay.
Part of this comprehensive plan is to include the school district as a stakeholder.
Correct.
So they can provide input and all that. Is someone putting the cart before the horse? I mean, or do we have enough information from our previous plan for the school district to move ahead and plan accordingly with that other information?
Well, it all depends on what the school district is interested in. If they're interested in identifying potential future locations where they might expect residential development to occur, then I think there's enough information in your current comprehensive plan to give them pretty good guidance as to where that's going to happen. We'll work to meet with them, I think, early enough in the process so we can understand, what they may have in mind, the options they're considering, and direct our efforts accordingly. If they do need us, for example, to identify alternative, locations for new schools, we can take that into consideration, and that can influence how we direct our process. So I think it's great that you're all planning at the same time. I also know that it is impossible to line up everything perfectly. So we have processes and procedures in place where plans can be amended over time. So if the school district moves in one direction, and that happens to be after you finish your comprehensive plan, then in 2017 or 18, you can consider an amendment to your plan.
And I suspect it'll be the reverse.
Yeah.
Where the school district will be making choices before we have our plan set.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity, frankly, that they're going on at the same time then too. So, hopefully there's enough communication and interaction where if they have, ideas that might influence, transportation or land use or utility systems, that they can consult with us during a time that we're thinking about the long term as well.
Okay, thanks.
Are you available to attend some of the school district subcommittee meetings that they'll be talking to these issues? I'm not sure if they're open to the public. I would assume they would be. But what's happening is the school district has a variety of questions that they are looking at, and they've farmed those questions out to 4 or 5 different subcommittees. Part of that is the land use, transportation, and so forth. So if this would go through, it probably would be worth your while to touch base with the school district to find out when some or all of those subcommittees are meeting.
Yeah. That sounds good. And that gets back to one of the early questions is, can we shift meetings around? So if it makes sense to meet with the school district or subcommittees of the district more than once, it will, within our meeting budget, we can accommodate that if that's where the greatest value is going to be gained through the process. But I can certainly make a point, working with Pauline and Eric, to touch base with the district early, so we're not missing something important.
Other comments?
I just think I read through it. I wanted to ask you about, for me, one of the biggest things is openness and transparency. And I think there was a reference to either using your website or our website, so I'm kind of interested in what you were thinking about that, or, because as this process goes on, I want to make sure that stuff is out there
Right.
for the public as early before meetings take place and so forth.
Right.
Possible. So is your website kind of user-friendly, up to speed with that?
It's
Or
pretty-
is
it's
it plug it
pretty
into ours, or?
It's pretty simple. We have about 4 different pages on the website. One of them is called Client Portal, maybe not the best name, but it's it's the spot where we would include information related to your process, and then we could either do that and have links on your webpage to it, or if the village chose to host it, then we would supply information and content and a format for it. But I agree. Anything of note, of substance, that we won't comment on to get out there early enough where people can have a meaningful amount of time, I think is important. I mean, it allows people to participate that, maybe dying to participate but just don't know how. It allows people to participate, as many families and others at 11:30 at night when the kids are down and they've got the dishes cleaned, rather than coming to a meeting at 7 p.m. When it's virtually impossible to get away. So, using the web page, I think, is going to be important, and it, that's how people communicate today. And so we have not only that, but social media, using Facebook and other things to get the word out on the process and allow people to participate as much as they want and when they want.
How often will you give us an update on the progress of the comprehensive plan?
As often as you want. What I would typically do by default is I'd have a monthly report, what we accomplished over the previous month, what we have planned over the next month, and then some key, deadlines or meetings that are maybe, perhaps just a bit beyond that we have our eyes on. So I'm happy. That's what I would typically do. I have done more frequent sort of weekly email. Here's what we did this week, here's what we're doing next week. So it's really your call.
Because I was just thinking of all the stakeholders and publicizing it on the web, for example. If there was a, every other week or at least maybe once a month, just sort of a summary of where we are in accomplishing the comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that, comes June or July, we don't hear people say they had no idea what was going on with the planning.
Yeah.
At least make it available to them. Whether or not they take advantage of it, that's entirely up to them.
Right. I'm happy to do that.
And it can
We'll
just
write
be,
that into
and
the
it can just be
contract.
bullet points. It doesn't have to be anything.
Yeah, it's absolutely, no,
elaborate.
it needs to be that. It's usually one side, one page
Yeah,
at the most.
That would be plenty. Good.
Other comments? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Look forward to working.
Moving on, the Public Safety Committee. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation to approve Ordinance 20-11, an ordinance regulating disposal of lost, seized, or abandoned property.
Long story short, there's too many bicycles in the back room. And we don't have enough room in the back room to house all the bicycles that are there. And so when we looked at options to try to get rid of them, our bicycle people, well, you people have read the information, but well, we have no place to go with them. The people don't want them anymore, and the person who used to pick up the bicycles and take the old ones and disseminate them or get rid of them or do whatever he did with them is not doing that anymore, will not be picking them up anymore, and the police department has no place to go with them. So as a result, we need to identify some way that we can get rid of them, and the best way to do that is the ordinance that we are looking at, or the ordinance that's being proposed at this point in time.
Am I interrupting you if I ask
No.
some questions?
No, fine.
It was amazing to me when I read this that there are that many bicycles in McFarland that are just abandoned.
Yes.
If you have a license, maybe they don't, you know whose it is, okay? I would presume there have been efforts made to try to find out whose bikes they are.
That's part of the ordinance as well. We wanted to make sure, we did make sure that there's a 30-day waiting period to make sure that they have a chance to come in and pick them up or identify that they've lost their
Yeah.
bike. And if they've lost their bike, the police have no problems taking them back to the room and
To
saying,
look for.
take your choice, you know. But the long and short story is that they are not licensed. They are
But-
not identified, and there's no way we can know who they belong to.
Has that process been followed up to date, that people, if they come in and say they have something lost, they show it to them?
Yes,
Okay, and you still got that many?
we still have that many. Most people don't come back and look at them. They don't even identify they've lost them. They don't report to the police that they're lost.
Amazing.
I think the other issue is that, you know, they know that they should be registering their children's bikes or their own bikes. If they don't, they presume the police department has no record anyway, so they won't be able to locate their bike. So, and they do offer bike registration at the annual bike rodeo as one way to alleviate some of that.
Are these mainly children's bikes?
Combination.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of hard to tell the difference between an adult and maybe a 12, 14-year-old kid, but, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the proposal. So I would move that we move forward with this new ordinance.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
I just want to say that, as I said at the Public Safety Committee meeting, that the ordinance that we passed and the changes we made last year, which Mary Pat and the Finance Committee kind of led, I believe covers this stuff. And so thank you for letting me speak, at least, Jerry, at the meeting. And I still am not convinced that we need to do this ordinance. I believe it's already covered under the ordinance that we passed last year.
I don't believe it is.
Well, I
because,
just-
yeah, that ordinance was written for village-owned property.
Yeah, but that's the
That
problem.
became surplus. It wasn't to do with found bikes.
Exactly whose property is it this ordinance is being written for? Will you tell me?
Unknown.
No, it's not unknown. It's our property. We're going to dispose of it. We will be following the statutory regulations that determine that it's our property, and then we will be getting rid of it. Period. It's our property. And
Well, I
the
don't
ordinance
look at
you
it that way.
passed covers our property. That's all. It's very simple.
Well, I don't think we ever thought of anything like found bicycles when we wrote that ordinance. And I haven't gone back and read it, but I
And the
know the
parts of that
intent
ordinance
was.
that are there that you did put in place that are responsible aren't reflected here. And I'm also concerned about that in terms of getting the annual report, the inventories necessary and all that kind of stuff. None of that's defined or called for here. I just beg you to remember the headlines from Sun Prairie and/or Fitchburg or any place else of the stuff that employees that have, public employees have been involved in, and in terms of improper buying and selling of municipal property. This doesn't cover that. The ordinance that we did pass basically covers it. So again, the chief's not here, and it's not a good night to talk about stuff
No.
that the chief's involved in. So if nothing else, I would really respectfully ask that we dig into it at least a little further so that it's clear that what we're doing. Because I don't think that what took place in Sun Prairie where the guy was authorized to buy and sell computers and he was doing it, making a profit and walking away with the money, or the employees in Fitchburg who were selling surplus equipment, quote unquote, that was determined to be surplus that really wasn't accounted for or anything else, and then they were pocketing the money from the sale of stuff. They would buy it and sell it a year later, and you know, I want to make sure that that doesn't happen here, and I think what we did pass kind of covers that, and I want to make sure that this is incorporated into that part of that. If we just need to add to it, Mary Pat, that's fine. But those are really important things. We have to make sure that there's a system in place of accountability of buying and selling or declaring surplus or whatever you want to call it.
Well, Claire, just in response, maybe from my perspective, okay? My perspective is that the staff went back and looked into this with the lawyer and actually asked them to be, if it was necessary, to write a lost and found, and it was found that, yes, it should be a lost and found identification. That's not our property, never ever turns over to our property. It's lost and found. Most of the lost and found that's there is no way, shape, or form going to profit anyone from being, because of what is being, it's actually going to be tried to given away for metal as much as anything, if we can get them to take it. Because a lot of times we're talking about material that's not really resellable as far as metal is concerned. And so as a result, it has been vetted out, it has been processed through the lawyer, and his recommendation was to identify lost and found specifically as separate.
Other comments? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Moving on, discussion and possible action on Resolution 22-2015, authorizing official representatives to act on behalf of the village for ambulance billing purposes. Eric, I'm going to turn that to you.
There we go. LifeQuest is our ambulance billing service, or our former ambulance billing service. We've moved on to Andres since that point in time. But bills that were originally committed to LifeQuest are still being collected by LifeQuest. At the point that the contract was with LifeQuest was originally opened, they opened a checking account to process payments. So the monies they receive gets deposited in this checking account through Hometown Bank. We do not open that account. LifeQuest does. We're a beneficiary of that account. And that's what's used for the amounts of money goes in there. And then on a monthly basis, they basically cut us a check, allocate some of the money, funds that are then sent to us. They take their fees out of that account as well. The trouble is that none of the existing members of the finance administration team were here when that account was opened, so we're not signers on that. And the original signing documentation that we do when I was hired doesn't list Hometown Bank because it's technically not our account. And so the resolution in front of you today is to appoint Tracy, myself, and Kelsey as official representatives on the account so that we can communicate with them and contact them and get the information that we need appropriately.
I will move to approve Resolution 22-2015, authorizing official representatives to act on behalf of the village for ambulance billing purposes.
Second it.
Discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Authority, Board, Commission, Committee, Agenda Item, Requests, Referrals, and Updates. Hearing none, I will move to convene in closed session in accordance with Wisconsin Stat 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, Parent E, to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public official over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, employee separation agreement terms, and negotiations strategy. Second by Jerry. We need a roll call vote.
Jerry?
Yes.
Sorry, Adrian? Rossington?
Yes.
Informal, sorry. Smoter?
Yes.
Kolk?
Aye.
Lytle?
Aye.
Mooney?
Aye.
Utter?
No.
Motion passes.